Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our latest in a series of consultation events we're doing about the return of Lynx back to the UK. My name is Dr. Paul O'Donoghue. I'm Director of the Lynx UK Trust, and we'll give an overview today of our project plans. As you know, everyone on this who's joining us today, we've given you the opportunity to send in questions, to talk about a project, to ask about any issues you have, or any concerns, or even if you want to get involved. So we'll deal with all that as well. So we'll go through our project plan, the rationale for what we want to do, how we've got to this point, the previous application we've made, and the upcoming resubmission. So we'll make a start. So I'll say a little bit about me. I'll be leading the project. We'll then go through the rationale for Lynx. What is the reason why we want to do this? What are the ecological and economic drivers for this? We'll talk about the next steps, what's going to happen after these consultations. And finally, we'll offer you the chance to get involved if you want to. We get a lot of emails from students and local people who are keen to get involved in the project, and we're very excited about that. So we'll engage with that at the end. So here we go. So I've worked in conservation for 25 years, done a lot of anti-poaching work all around the world. Seen a lot of good things and a lot of bad things. But I think we can all agree that conservation is massively important now, and we do face a biodiversity crisis and a climate crisis. Closer to home, I've been involved in carnivore monitoring and management, and you can see there that's me fitting a GPS collar to a female brown bear. That's in Romania. So I've been on the kind of front line, as it were, of predator-human conflict, and also monitoring, large carnivores in Europe. I've also been involved I'm a scientist. I'm a geneticist by training. So I did the DNA work that allowed the great bustard to come back to the UK for the first time in hundreds of years. So it's the DNA work that I did that allowed this reintroduction to go to the next level and to bring in birds from Spain. And that's now been a highly successful reintroduction project. And we've got breeding busters back in the UK, which is amazing. I'm also heavily involved in the Scottish wildcat. And at one point, I held the only license in the UK to DNA sample and collar Scottish wildcats. So how did the project start? People always ask me this. I always went to a lot of meetings, used to go to all the stakeholder meetings, and everyone sits around talking about predators. Lynx always comes up, and it's always been a case of 10 years, 15 years, 25 years. Everyone sits around eating biscuits, not doing anything practical about it. So we decided, the public opinion seemed to be that there was a great interest in this and a great deal of support for this amongst the general public. So we wanted to test that out. And on the back of what we found, that would guide how we develop the project. So to cut a long story short, we launched a project in the Sunday Times with a public survey. Now, we didn't know what response we'd get, and it ended up, we got 9,650 responses in about 6 days, making it the biggest conservation consultation of its kind ever done. And I think for comparison, the beaver trial, that got about 2,500 to 3,000 responses. And this Lynx project got nearly 10,000. So that just shows the public interest, but crucially, and surprisingly, even for us at that time, there was a 92.8% of people in favour of Lynx coming back to the UK. And interestingly, on the survey, we asked whether you're from rural or urban environments, and it was a 50-50. So it showed that people were equally supportive in a rural and urban environment. So that gave us a flying start, really, to get going. And then, we have to all be honest and look at the context that we're working in now. With the state of the UK environment. And so there was a State of Nature report published in 2016, which, as you can see there, is a huge collaborative effort between scientists from a whole range of organizations. And the results were, well, utterly depressing, to be honest, and quite embarrassing for the UK. So between 1970 and 2013, 56% of species declined, with 40% showing strong or moderate declines. The UK has lost significantly more nature over the long term than the global average, and we're now one of the most nature depleted countries in the world. I mean, that's almost unbelievable. And this concept that we hear sometimes that, but look, it's a green and pleasant land, green is good. It isn't. Just because a field is green doesn't mean it has any biodiversity. We've lost so much, we really have. Then, of course, now we've had recently COP26, and the climate crisis has really come to the fore, and it's really galvanized and it's focused people's minds. But it's crucial to link the climate crisis with the biodiversity crisis. Healthy functioning ecosystems are absolutely vital to mitigating climate change. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. And that's certainly accepted now within the scientific community. And we've even had lead politicians like Nicola Sturgeon linking climate crisis with the biodiversity crisis. More recently, we had a Mammal Society report looking at the state of British mammals. And again, it made for extremely depressing reading. I mean, even common species such as the hedgehog are now becoming more and more difficult to find. They're declining in numbers. We have the Scottish wildcat in the UK, which is one of the rarest animals on the planet. None of this makes good reading, and it strongly points to the need for ecosystem restoration. So, I think that lynx coming back to the UK will boost biodiversity. There will be a keystone species that will facilitate ecological development and restoration. But let's start with basics. What is a lynx? So it's not a big cat, it's not a lion, it's not a tiger. It's a medium-sized cat, relatively small, weighing 18 to 30 kilograms. Basically, I call it, not very flatteringly, it's like a skinny Labrador, basically. You know, it's not a huge animal. 60 to 70 centimeters in height. And this is another myth to dispel straight away. You know, when we first launched this project, and we don't really get it anymore, but it used to make us smile when we heard about packs of lynx, or packs of lynx marauding the countryside. Lynx are highly solitary, territorial animals. They're active dawn and dusk and during the night, and they're absolutely a woodland specialist and a deer specialist. And roe deer have been shown to make up to 95% of the prey. And a key point is they are no risk to humans whatsoever. There has never been a documented case in human history of a wild, healthy lynx ever attacking a human being. So they're the kind of ideal predator. They've got the charisma, the kind of gravitas, the ecological keystone species benefits without any of the risk or the danger to people. There's about 50,000 lynx worldwide, and most of those are in Russia and China. And Europe, Scandinavia have now quite large populations, and lynx are now spreading. We'll talk a bit more about that later. They're actually rewilding themselves, restoring their own populations. And that's just a picture of a beautiful male lynx in Germany, in the snow, going about its business, captured on a camera trap. And this is the only time you normally ever see a lynx on a camera trap. So what's the context of this? You know, we're talking about lynx in the UK. Well, should they be here? Why are they not here? So we'll cover all that now. So lynx, let's get this absolutely clear. Lynx are a UK native species. They're as native as a robin or a blackbird or a hedgehog or a badger. They were once widespread across the UK. We did some work with some cavers who, braver than me, but go down into limestone caves and will get remains, old bone samples of animals that used to be here, and they turned up lynx samples from the south of England, Devon, right up to the northwest of Scotland. So lynx were all over England and would have had a very healthy population. And the carbon dating of these bones suggests that they went extinct about 13 to 1400 years ago. And this is really interesting. They went extinct before bears and wolves. And the reason for that was not conflict with hunter-gatherers or farmers or anything like that. It was because they were trapped to extinction. A combination of deforestation, but then intensive hunting and trapping led to their extinction. It was their pelt, their beautiful coat, that was the demise, and we see that with lots of species today, unfortunately. You know, especially felines, the beautiful, magnificent, spotted, striped coats, often the downfall, which is incredibly sad. And it's incredibly sad to think that, you know, the last lynx was killed for its pelt. However, since then, thankfully, the UK has experienced reforestation and obviously a significant shift in hunting practices. There isn't now any fur trapping and trade in the UK. Thank goodness, that's all stopped. So the risks that lynx faced are removed. And this picture always makes me sad because it shows how the lynx biology betrayed it. And when a lynx is threatened or when it feels vulnerable, it climbs up a tree because out of protection away from its natural predator, which would have been wolves or bears. But that was used to hunt the lynx. And, you know, I always imagine that's the last lynx in the UK being treed by a pack of dogs before it was dispatched for its pelt. Gladly, those days are over. They're now likely to thrive in many areas of Scotland and England, especially given the abundance of prey species. And the prey species is, again, almost exclusively deer. So, you know, there's been a number of surveys done, scoping studies, feasibility studies, and all of them come out with exactly the same message, that lynx that the UK is able to support populations of lynx in England and in Scotland. You know, that's clear, and I don't think anyone really doubts the sustainability of it. There's certainly enough food here and enough space and enough forest. So how do we go about bringing lynx back? So this is what most governments now, the Scottish government and Natural England, so Nature Scot and Natural England, they will use these guidelines for reintroduction and other conservation translocation by the IUCN, which details best practice about how to go about species translocations, and in this case it would be a trial translocation. So this is what the government's used to assess any application. One of the key things that it starts fairly near the front is there should be strong evidence that the threat that caused any previous extinction have been correctly identified and removed or sufficiently reduced. Obviously, it would be insanity to bring an animal back to face the same threats that caused its extinction. But as we've shown, there has been a complete cessation of the fur trade, and there is now forestry habitat available for them. So that is a big tick early on. And of course, to habitat directives and legislation and conventions which member states are signed up to, and you know, there's a whole range of legislation that points towards the restoration of once present species and to trial the appropriateness of species that used to be here in the current context. And that's where this project comes in. Let's be clear, this is not a reintroduction that we're proposing. That may come in the future, but we are proposing a trial, a time-limited scientific trial. That's also actually reversible at any point. So what have we done before? So we have done a lot of consultation, a great deal of it. So we've talked to a whole range of national stakeholders. We invited a whole range of national stakeholders to an event a few years ago, the first ever time that people got together to discuss lynx. There were, I think, 38 people there. It was a really useful event which guided a lot of our application process. We've done numerous local meetings. They've always been very well attended, often standing room only. There's always been polarized views, which we totally expect. And there's always been people for and against again, which is totally expected when we're dealing with the release into the UK of an apex predator. So no surprises there. Obviously, we've had COVID now and still going on. I still know people who are off sick with COVID, and in Northern England and Scotland, COVID rates are rising. So, you know, we've all been through a bad time, and we've not been able to do the local events that we actually really enjoyed doing, and we did very frequently, as people in the Kielder area will know. I think we did 5 village hall events, we did other stakeholder events, we did visits to people's farms, properties, businesses. So yeah, all that unfortunately had to stop. And as you know from last year, if you've been following our project, we had to do online events. But interestingly, they worked incredibly well. And what we found was the reach was much higher and the engagement was much higher. So the number of questions that it was generated was higher, and the total number of people watching the event was high. And we were able to identify where people were watching from. So actually, we reached more people, ironically, through online events than through physically being there doing local events. And that's why we're carrying on in that vein now. We've also done questionnaires. We've handed out questionnaires in Kielder Village, and as I said, we canvassed public opinion on a national scale and on a local scale. And all this goes into feeding back to guide our application. Now, the question is, how much do you need to do? Well, no one's ever done this before. No one's ever brought back an apex predator back to the UK. So how much is enough? Well, that's an open question. But at some point, you have to actually get everything together and submit the license once you feel you spoke to everybody who needs to be spoken to. And I don't think we can ever be accused of not giving everyone a voice. I mean, everybody's had an opportunity here to talk about Lynx. We listen. That's the key thing that I want to say, and we want people to be comfortable and confident in what we want to do and engaged with it. And you know, I mean, I know sometimes, me personally, I can come across as quite abrasive, and sometimes I don't mean to, and if I have done, then I apologize for that. But it's because I'm passionate about what I want to do. It's because I see the potential in this project and the benefit it brings. It's brought to other countries, and I want it to happen in the UK, and I want it to happen in Kielder. I think Kielder would benefit greatly from it. So sometimes I admit I can be passionate, and that might come across as even arrogant, and you know, if it is, then that's not my intention. But believe me, we listen to everything you say, to every question you put in, and we use that information. So just to be clear and to show you how we've done that, when we first applied for the license, we wanted a 5-year trial with 6 lynx. Now, that's quite, you know, fairly ambitious. It's certainly a long time. 5 years is you know, we'd admit is a long time, and 6 lynx is a reasonable number of lynx. And you know, over 5 years there'd be breeding iterations, and so you'd end up with more lynx. You know, we thought between 10 to 14 at the end of that 5-year trial. So there was obviously some concern amongst some stakeholders about the length of the trial, and if things started to go wrong, they'd have 5 years to wait. We get that, and we've listened. So we're proposing a 3-year scientific trial. We don't want to go any less than that because it won't give us the data that we need. But believe me, we've listened. We've reduced 2 years of the trial. Hopefully that provides some reassurance. And 3 lynx instead of 6. So 1 male and 2 females. So again, that reduces the breeding output of that population. It also makes it much easier, obviously, for any exit strategy if it was ever needed. And it also makes the project very reversible at any point. Now, let me just clarify that. Lynx have been successfully reintroduced in numerous countries across Europe, and to great fanfare and great success. We think it'll be no different here, but a question that come up in consultation from stakeholders and the public is, what happens if it goes wrong? Can you catch all the lynx? So reversibility and exit strategies are fundamental to our plans. So, just to re-emphasize again how we've listened to feedback, 3-year trial, 3 lynx instead of 6, which makes the project reversible at any point. So what will it involve? It will involve a time-limited trial reintroduction in order to observe, measure, and analyse the effects of lynx on various aspects of the UK's natural, social, and economic environments. So our job is to collect data with other people, with local stakeholders as well, with a steering group to collect data, to assess that data, and to provide it to the relevant government departments so that they can make a decision regarding the long-term desirability of lynx in the UK. It's not the Lynx UK Trust's place to decide on a full reintroduction. What we're offering is to gather the data for that decision to be made. Now, that decision may be positive, it may be negative, depending on the data. We obviously expect it will be positive because we are confident will show ecological and economic benefits. So why would we trial a reintroduction? What a lynx reintroduction? What's the point? Why would we even bother? Well, we've already said that there's no doubt UK countryside, the ecosystems that they're barely functioning, high levels of species loss, or species decline. Lynx will restore some balance to those damaged ecosystems. They will predominantly control deer numbers, and not just by the amount they predate, but also by changing the behavior. Deer currently without predators, they behave more sedentary, they don't move around as much, which means that they overeat areas. I mean, all of us will have seen a forest where you look and you can see a clear browse line about 3.5, 4 feet above the ground. That's where the deer can nibble. Everything below that is decimated, everything above it grows. That means there's no understory for our birds. Is it any surprise that our woodland bird species are tumbling in numbers, declining all over the UK? It's not a surprise, it's not rocket science, because our ecosystems don't work. And as well as the ecological benefits, there's very, very strong economic benefits, which we'll come on to in a minute. What's the nitty-gritty of an apex predator? What does it do? So I've just talked to you about deer control. It allows regeneration. I mean, there is so little recruitment in UK forests at the moment. There's so little natural regeneration. The only way to grow woodlands at the moment is to fence them with 6-foot-high deer fences, a great cost and a blight on the countryside. There's deer fencing all over the place, metal, wood. We have to do that to get woodlands to grow. Fox control. Deer, lynx predate foxes. There's lots of scientific literature to show that lynx will control fox numbers and other mesopredators. They also, crucially, provide carrion for birds and other scavengers. So let's say in winter, when food's short, a lynx kill becomes a great attractant for other species that can thrive and survive off those scraps during the winter. So it's about resilience in ecosystems. And this stuff's well documented, so I won't go through it in too much detail now, but you will have all heard of the impacts of wolves in Yellowstone and how that it completely transformed what was a highly eroded and damaged ecosystem. It was overbrowsed, there was landscape erosion, wolves came back, things changed, more balanced, more food for mid-level animals, more food for scavengers during the winter. Some nice pictures from Yellowstone. Eagles attracted to the kill, foxes, all those species interactions that you get. Smaller predators attracted in, and even the bigger guys. And I always found this is quite interesting. It shows how a healthy ecosystem provides resilience to climate change. So in North America, bears hibernate. Now, if it gets warmer, and let's face it, the planet is getting warmer, they come out of hibernation early, food for them. So before the wolves were there, they were having issues getting enough food. But since the wolves were there, they provided winter scavenging. So a protein source for the birds that came out of hibernation too early. So it's kind of, it shows that resilience and mitigation of climate change can happen, but only with healthy, diverse, functioning ecosystems. And it's great in the UK now. People have done some great work bringing beavers back to the UK. How fantastic has that been? It's been all over the news and lots of interest and it's got a lot of people excited about ecosystem restoration, and they've shown the ecological cascades, the trophic cascades, and that's exciting for me to see and for everyone else to see. The biologists, this is really exciting. It's ecosystems coming back to life, and it just shows our beaver, a fairly innocuous animal, can have profound ecological impacts. So lynx are part of a bigger ecological restoration kind of vision for the whole country, which everybody's signing up to. The UK government's talking about a UK rewilding task force. There's tree planting targets. There's commitments to mitigating climate change, carbon offsetting, everything. But it all hinges on healthy, functioning ecosystems. So again, for those of you who are interested, who want to go into a bit more of the science, if there's any research students out there, then you can look at these references, and they'll lead you to other references which build on this area of restoration ecology. So we talked about controlling deer, and the first point there is increased success of tree planting projects. Everybody now is talking about planting trees, rightly so, brilliant, massively in support of that. We're talking about new national forests, linking up forests, habitat corridors, absolutely superb, really great work, really exciting. But you cannot have successful tree planting projects without apex predators, unless you are going to heavily guard those trees for years and years and years with metal fencing at huge cost. Otherwise, they'll just be eaten. A sapling is the best food you can give a deer. They'll hunt them out. They'll seek them out. I've seen personally, and anyone involved in forestry will know this. Huge areas can be damaged in one night by a herd of deer going through. A new planting project, tens of thousands of pounds can be wasted. Huge amounts of effort, human effort, and goodwill can be damaged. So we need healthy forests, and we need predators to provide the opportunity for these trees to grow. So again, less deer fencing, reduce cost of forestry. Also, and there's always the way the media like to pitch it, it's links against farmers, and it's like there's like a battle between farmers and conservationists. Well, it's not like that, and it doesn't need to be like that, and the reality is that it isn't. I mean, for example, arable crops near woodland areas will benefit from lynx because there'll be reduced deer populations to eat the crops. So actually, a good number of farmers would benefit from lynx coming back to the UK. So again, it's not always black and white, and it's not always the way the media sometimes like to spin it. And we all understand why, but the reality is different. And a lot of farmers are interested in diversification, in ecotourism opportunities. That's happened with a number of other reintroductions throughout the UK, where species have come back and provided opportunities for landowners and for farmers to actually get another income stream, which I think, especially at the moment, is welcomed by all. So about how lynx control and regulate roe deer populations. So again, it's this talk is online, it's being recorded, it'll be there so people can look at it in the future. But if you want to get into the science, it's all there. So we've talked about ecology, and that on its own is very compelling. So we've had some very clever environmental economists look at lynx, look at other ecotourism projects involving predators and other species across the UK and across Europe. And no matter which way you look at it, the net benefits to the UK economy are enormous. They're in the tens of millions, for large scale long-term Lynx projects, absolutely tens of millions, and they provide jobs and training opportunities for young people. One of the first days I spent in Kielder, we were in my pickup, and we had Lynx UK Trust logo on the side, and someone came running up to me, a young student, second year at university, I think, and they said, "Thank God you're here. I might be able to get a job to stay in this area." And it's moments like that make you realize that there is a need for this project, and there is a will for this project, and there is sustainable jobs for local people. This project can breathe life into areas. And the numbers, again, if you want to go through this, go through it at your leisure. There's lots of examples here from Scotland, from the US, from all over the UK, about the benefits of different species bringing money into rural communities. But Lynx is next level. The charisma, the interest, the power of attraction to bring people to areas for the chance of walking in the forest with lynx is huge. Another really neat ospreys at Kielder Water, in the same area. How great is that? They've been a fantastic success, really popular, brought people in, people love it, and our work on Lynx complements this absolutely. It also complements the dark sky concept in Kielder, where it's a wilderness area. There's limited light pollution. It's a magnificent place to see stars, and Lynx add to that mystique, to that wild feeling of a place. There's no doubt about it. So again, everything we try and do is backed up by science. So it's all so when our licenses go in, they're all referenced by science. So again, you can go and check these out if you want to. So let's talk about a real life case study of Lynx. Let's talk about actually what happens. And an example of this, of a Lynx reintroduction and a full-blown reintroduction, is in the Harz Mountains in central Germany. So they started off with the release of about 15 animals. There's now around 120. And the project has been going for quite a while, and it's gone exceptionally well. So just look at the impact Lynx have on the influencing visitors to the Harz Mountains. So obviously hiking, if you go to this area, very popular, the landscape, peace and quiet. Then comes Lynx. So this data is gathered by surveying tourists in the Harz Mountains, why they're there. Look how highly Lynx score, about 55% of people are there because of Lynx. It comes above historic sites, above food and drink, above the culture, above bird watching, above even winter sports. So that just shows the draw of Lynx. And this is hard data collected from real people in the Harz Mountains. And so some numbers were crunched on, we asked people how much they spent, where they stayed, how many times they ate out, what they did in the area, what other spends they did. And we worked out how much of that money is attributed to Lynx. And it was between 7.5 and 12.5 million pounds a year for the Harz Mountain area. It's incredible. And there is no reason why that cannot be replicated in the UK at Kielder. No reason at all. We interviewed people, and they give us quotes, and they told us the stories. And there's people, who see tracks, who then go back with the kids to try and track the animals. And again, read this when you have time. But these animals, when you walk through the Harz Mountains forest, you see elderly people, you see kids. What you don't see is any fear at all from anybody. And there's over 100 lynx in this forest, and there's no conflict with people there. Lynx are not feared by people there. There's people with dogs both on and off leads. There's nobody panicking about lynx. And the proof's in the pudding. Lynx have been there now for many years, and there's been no issue. In fact, the opposite. If you look of what's happened there. There's been an explosion in tourism, in positive benefits. There's a Lynx visitor centre. Everything's branded with the Lynx, everything. From the cable car to the shops to t-shirts to stuffed toys, the whole lot. Oh, a Lynx cable car, it's cool. They love it. The Lynx is embraced, and it's almost like Disneyland for Lynx. But the message is serious. It's about ecosystem restoration, and people want to be in these wild environments, and the Lynx makes the environment wilder. So again, there's so many examples of it. It's unreal. It's fantastic to see. So now we come on to we're giving you the benefits, and now we come on to a perceived risk. And I think it's important to say we understand that farmers are concerned by any predator, and we know the position of the NFU and the NSA. They oppose any predatory introduction. We understand that, and that's clear, and it's well publicized. It's the same with the white-tailed eagle reintroduction. That was opposed. So we understand, and we understand the position, and we're sympathetic to it. But we have to come back to the actual situation and separate perceived risk from actual risk. So we carried out, AECOM carried out a survey of all lynx predation across Europe. And what they found was really clear. The average across the EU is 0.4 sheep per lynx per year. That's the cold hard facts. It's higher in Norway for a very simple reason. Sheep in Norway are herded into the forest. They're farmed in the forest, whereas most of the rest of Europe, including the UK, sheep are, well, that doesn't happen. They're in more open environments, which lynx don't go into. So Norway is always, it's always good when people mention Norway, because it is the exception that proves the rule. But that's the average 0.4 sheep per lynx per year. That's just a fact. We will provide compensation. We will provide compensation. We absolutely want to, but we think the chances of lynx predation in the Kielder area will be infinitesimally small. But we will fully compensate, and not only compensate for the price of the animal, but also we understand that there might be a farmer may have to remove any predated stock, and there'll be a cost to that. So we'll provide funding for that too. So rest assured, if the highly unlikely situation where a lynx takes a livestock, a sheep, that farmer will be fully compensated. We obviously want that to happen, but we think the chances of it are so small based on the data. Again, with some people talk about impact on game birds, other species. Well, actually, lynx aren't going to waste time chasing small game species. These lynx are deer specialists. The energetics involved in them hunting down, searching for small game, it just doesn't make sense. They're not going to quarter a hedgerow to try and flush out a game bird. It's just not worth their while for the size of the animal. They're deer specialists. But also by reducing fox numbers and other mesopredators, they will provide balance, which will actually benefit a lot of ground-dwelling birds. And then if we look at a real-life example of where lynx live and where conversation takes place, and we've been to this project, we've spoken to stakeholders, and we've spoken to the project managers about the compensation. And I'll show you the figures shortly, and I think you'll be surprised, but it certainly demonstrates what we're saying. And it's always good to get context. There's a few important stats on here now, and these, again, they're not our stats. They're gathered from government sources, from scientific literature. So the blue in the corner represents the predicted number of lynx attacks based on the data. The rest of it is the amount of known dog attacks that happen in the UK. So look at the difference. Dogs are far bigger threats to sheep than lynx ever will be. And obviously we're dead against irresponsible dog owners allowing the dogs to worry and kill sheep. That's as appalling to us as it is to a sheep farmer. And then let's look at the background mortality, and this is really striking. So every year in the UK, between 2 and 6 million lambs die every year to infectious diseases, malnutrition, exposure, and natural mortality. 2 to 6 million, compared to 0.4 sheep per lynx per year. So that context is very, very important, and it comes back to the point I made earlier on about the perceived versus the actual risk. And we need to look at the actual risk here, not perception. And this is cold, hard money. This is real data from a real project taken over multiple years. Now there's over 100 lynx in this population in the Harz Mountains. And look at the figures. 800 quid, 756 quid, 500, as the population is growing, compensation only 540 quid. That works out about 50p, less than that. About £5 per lynx. But we showed you slides before that show that lynx bring in up to £12.5 million into that area. So you've got total compensation of 540 or 819 or whatever it is versus 12.5 million. So again, we have to get perspective, and we have to look at perceived versus actual risk. And this is cold hard data, not collected by us. It's there for anyone to see in the literature, and that's what it says. So as I said, we've submitted a license before. The first organization ever to do that, to even plan to do that. We carried out the largest conservation consultation ever done. We showed we had 92.8% support across the general public. We carried out way over 12 months local consultation. We met with everybody we could think of, and we held a lot of open events. We had letters of support from a broad cross-section of the community from different businesses. We also had 700 square kilometers of landowner access. That's unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented. Of landowners who said they were happy for us to use their land, to access their land for the purposes of studying and collecting data on this trial reintroduction of lynx. We had Lloyd's of London, an insurance broker, who would insure every sheep in Britain because they know the risk is so small. And between our team, we had over 250 years combined conservation experience within the team. I was invited down to Westminster. I met Michael Gove, and he told me he was personally supportive. So, you know, we couldn't really do much more than what we did. There's just no logical or scientific argument against the reintroduction of lynx in the UK. And that's what we felt we presented. So what happened next? Well, as a lot of you know, as all of you will know, we submitted in June 2017. It went to Secretary of State level. No other species license had ever gone to this level for consideration. That's how serious our project, our license was treated. And that's the kind of, you know, the importance of this animal coming back to the UK. So it was rejected in November 2018 by Michael Gove, the day before the big Brexit vote. Now there was a big discordance between the application and the letter. There was a lot of, it was quite funny to read. It was as though the response hadn't, the response we got, the people who wrote it hadn't read the application. There was a complete contradiction in a number of places, but you know, there may or may not have been a political element in it. We don't know, and we never will know. But you know, it was frustrating. Then, of course, we've had Brexit, and then we've had COVID. And without the last two, this license would have been resubmitted earlier. But as we all know, the world has changed beyond almost any recognition. You know, and it's set to change a bit more by the looks of things, but that's another story. But yeah, climate change is now front page news. It's accepted as arguably the biggest threat facing humanity. And like I said, the climate crisis has to be seen in conjunction with the biodiversity crisis. You can't tease them apart. You need healthy forest ecosystems to absorb carbon to mitigate climate change. That's it. It's simple. And you can't have healthy forest ecosystems without apex predators. Again, it's simple. So the bigger picture stuff, everyone's aware of it now. People have maybe never thought about conservation or the impacts of climate change, or it's not going to happen in our lifetime. Well, it is. It's happening now. We've all seen it, and it's hitting us right in the face, and it's clear and it's unambiguous what's happening to this planet. Also, close to home, on a more kind of finer scale, there's changes being announced to the farming subsidy system, where farmers will be paid for ecosystem services. And again, we welcome that. And I think, there might be some transitional period, and there might be some difficulties ironing out the details, but it's a welcome message from the government, and hopefully farmers actually benefit in the long run, and so does the whole of society. Getting paid to deliver ecosystem functions can only be a good thing. And there's been other successful reintroductions. So beavers, now there's a number of releases that have taken place. And again, overall, and not everybody, and you never please everybody all of the time, and you shouldn't even really try, to be honest, but beavers have been, by any measure, a success. And they've galvanized public interest, and they've increased ecosystem function. There's also a renewed sense of urgency. It's like I talked about at the start, everything's 10, 25 years away. Now people are realizing it's almost too late to act now. Yesterday was arguably too late. It doesn't mean to say we give up, but it means that we don't sit around endlessly debating things. We get stuff done. There's been changes in Natural England personnel right at the top. We've had Tony Juniper in the national press talking about lynx and wolves. That never happened before. We've had the white-tailed eagle reintroduction on the Isle of Wight. Again, previous applications in Norfolk had failed. This one was granted. So there's been a seismic shift in both political and public perception of what we need to do as a society and how we need to change. And species ecological restoration is part of that whole process. And also, it's been really amazing to see lynx naturally recolonizing former ranges. They're in Belgium and Holland now, but they haven't been released or reintroduced. They've come back on their own, and they haven't been vilified, or there's been no panic. They've been welcomed as kind of celebrities back into the country. It's great to see that enlightenment, that change. It's really, really good to see. And it'd be great if we can have the same in the UK. And let's just be really clear about that. If it wasn't for the English Channel, lynx would already be in the UK. They'd already be back. And that's sometimes the most frustrating thing. Because of that channel, we have to translocate them. Otherwise, they would naturally recolonize, no doubt about that. So, and just to emphasize that point with lynx and climate change, it can't be emphasized enough. We need healthy ecosystems. It's clear from a tree planting point of view and hitting our aspirations for forest cover and carbon storage and carbon sequestration, all these kind of things. You can't grow healthy forests without predators. It's impossible. It's impossible unless you intensively manage and fence everything out. Well, that isn't a functioning ecosystem. That's basically a zoo for trees. 6-foot fences, trees inside, animals kept out. That's not an ecosystem. It's a park. It's a garden. It's a park. And so it's against this backdrop of climate change, against these aspirations to plant trees on a massive scale. We're talking about billions of pounds going into these projects, and the resubmission of our next license in this context. Like I say, when we first started this project, it was seen as kind of extreme and out there. Now it's seen as very mainstream and arguably essential. So we've shown you
We've taken on feedback from stakeholders. We've listened, and believe me, we have 3 links for 3 years. That's what the trial will be. It's reversible at any point, and written into our project plan is clear exit strategies, clear triggers, where if they're hit, the project will end. Because if it doesn't work, we don't want it to carry on. I promise you that. You know, it'll be my name on the license. And the project doesn't work, it'll stop. We're not going to flog a dead horse. But we strongly believe that this will be a huge success, and there'll be a clamour for links in the UK when this starts. We've also looked at our project plan, and we've focused heavily on providing local capacity in Kielder. In terms of staff, we want to provide local jobs. We want to provide project officer jobs, communication officer jobs in the local area, people who live in the local area. These people will be well connected. They'll already have community links. Really, really important. You know, we're talking about, you know, good, sustainable jobs. We've carried out a HRA, a habitat risk assessment. So, which is, you know, a lighter version than an environmental impact assessment. Now, you know, environmental impact assessments are normally carried out when you build a road or housing development or whatever, but we've done a habitat risk assessment for links, and the results will show a net benefit to the various habitats and ecosystems in the area. And crucially, as we're getting closer now, we need to start thinking about nitty-gritty. So we had a recent visit. Again, COVID delayed it by 2 years, but we went to Sweden. We met up with Swedish biologists. We went out tracking links. We spoke to people. We met people. We discussed attitudes to links. We discussed challenges of living with predators. And remember, there's bears and wolves in Sweden as well. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. And we're also very keen on getting a steering group in place before the project starts. Again, other reintroductions, they've done that after they've got the license. But we want to do it before. We want to be fully prepared. We want the steering group made up of farmers, of business people, of community members, of academics, so that the impacts of links can be almost independently assessed. So everybody, all stakeholder groups get a view. And again, if you're living in the Kielder area and you have an interest, if you're pro or against links, both those views are equally welcome. And that's what we want in the steering group, a balance of people in there that represent the community. And we're not trying to pretend by any stretch of the imagination that everybody in Kielder wants links. But like I say, you can't get consensus on anything. But I don't think anyone can argue the ecological and economic potential. So yeah, we've been trying to get to Sweden for a while. We've not been able to, but we finally did. We met with Lynx biologists. We had a fantastic time walking around forest where lynx live. We discussed areas of donor lynx. So we're now at that level where we're identifying populations in Sweden that will provide links for this project. We're talking about which trapping techniques to use, holding facilities, how the mechanics, practicality of transporting links, the quarantining, the disease testing, everything. So we're at that level of nitty gritty now, and it was really useful to go to Sweden to look at the impact. It's the same as in Germany. Most people are happy that links are there. They see a benefit to it. They enjoy being out in the environment more because links are there than without links being there. And the habitat is very similar to Kielder. I'll show you some pictures in a minute. But it's just striking that, you know, you go to Germany, Central Europe, you go to Scandinavia, all these people live very comfortably with links. And the key thing is there's no fear and there's no panic, and there's a tolerance and there's an acceptance. And most importantly, people see the benefit. This is where lynx live. Well, I could show you 100 pictures like that in Kielder. This is where lynx live. You know, some deciduous, some coniferous, little rocky outcrops where they use, again, similar places in Kielder. You know, there's young coniferous species growing there. Again, there's 100 sites like that in Kielder Forest. This is real lynx habitat. This is where they walk, where they don't. There's people in there with people dog walking. There's other people around. People use the area recreationally. And this is what we were looking for. Again, we walked in lynx habitat, didn't see any lynx. Lynx might have seen us. That's quite exciting to think. But this is a lynx track. And just to see that lynx track and to walk on that same path that lynx have taken, that's so exciting. And I think a lot of people find that very, very exciting. And they'll want to walk in the forest where there's lynx. They'll want to see a scratching post, see a lynx pug mark as it crosses the trail. And that excitement, it's something else. It's great to walk the same ground as these animals. So we're always asked, and we're very grateful for this. We're very lucky. There are a lot of people who contact us about being involved. So we want this to be a community project. It will only succeed if the community is on board. That's it. It's a fact. You know, if the community is against it, it won't work. So we want to be totally inclusive. And like I say, even if you're against a project, get in touch. If you want to be on a steering group, get in touch. If you want to be the person who looks at the data and assesses as input into how the project's going and feed back into the project, get in touch. If you want to be a volunteer, and we have loads of volunteer requests from people, and we're very grateful for that, from all different backgrounds, which is, again, even better. We'll be building up. Even when we get the license application, we'll be wanting a very strong ground base of local volunteers. That's going to be really important to our project. So crucially, if you want to be involved in a steering group, if you want to help or volunteer, or if you have any further questions, then you can email us at admin@lynxuk.org. You can email us there and we'll get back to you. We'll get in touch. So these are some questions that have come in, and some from local and some from further afield. That's great. So we had Rachel from Northumberland. So the way, as you all know, because you're listening, we advertise this on Facebook. We Facebook advertised, targeted it to people in Northumberland for different interests: outdoors, farming, conservation, wildlife, business, and we got responses and questions that came in. And one question is from Rachel in Northumberland. How much money have you actually set aside to compensate farmers for sheep killed by lynx attacks? Where's the money coming from, and how long do you expect it to last? So there's 3 questions there. So if we take, for example, the Harz Mountains, where there's 100 lynx. Now we're talking about 3 lynx, but let's say we use the same compensation for 100 lynx. Then that comes to about €3,000, which is less than £3,000. That's what it comes down to. But we're talking about 33 times the number of lynx. If we actually use the scientific average across Europe, 0.4 sheep per lynx per year, and looking at the current data, the kind of the price of a culled ewe is about £96.75. It's come down slightly from last year. So if you take 0.4, 40% of that, it's about 40 quid. So 40 quid per lynx per year is what the science as also that. So for the whole trial, that's £120 per lynx. Times by 3 lynx is about 360 quid, plus some costs for removing fallen stock. So it's not a huge amount of money. Even if you took the worst case scenario and used population, a hugely larger population, even if you used a situation where the lynx we released only fed on sheep, which is preposterous and simply won't happen. But even if we did, lynx kill once a week. So if we're talking about roughly £100 for a ewe, plus 30 to 40 pounds for removal, 140 pounds times 50, about seven grand per lynx for the trial. Times 3, 20 grand. That is, but it will never ever get to that stage because, like we say, we build in exit strategies. So if lynx start to focus on livestock, I promise you they will be removed. But in terms of the money, we're going to use the Harz Mountains as a real life example, and we're going to use the total amount of compensation. So the money is there, it's ready, it's come from private donors, and it will last the whole length of the trial. And believe me, this will not be a case of we don't want to compensate. These lynx will be GPS collared. They'll be monitored constantly, absolutely constantly. They'll have GPS collars with built-in VHF radio, so we can find out where they are at any time. So we can track any potential predation events of the movement of that lynx. And I give you my word, if a lynx has killed a sheep, that farmer will be fully compensated. That's a key element of this project. But like I say, the chances of that predation happening are extremely low. And there's a lot of scientific literature which will be going into our resubmission that shows that where you have healthy prey populations, lynx just don't bother with livestock. They focus on what they do best, which is hunting deer. But really appreciate your question, Rachel. Well thought out question, and really appreciate it. And we've got Megan from Northumberland. Given that the main area of concern over this project is from farmers concerned at the loss of sheep, can this not easily be resolved by paying farmers a going rate for each confirmed kill by a lynx during the project? It would reassure farmers, be a small financial risk to the project, given it's likely to be a rare event, and allow a fantastic project to go ahead with all the biodiversity and economic benefits to the area. So again, we've got someone local to the area, Northumberland, who recognises the concerns of people in the community, also sees the benefits to the community as well. And hopefully we've answered that question there. Of course, we will fully compensate. But as Megan rightly says, it's likely to be a rare event, a very rare event. And this is from Ellie from Surrey, obviously further away, but a very good question. Clearly somebody knows the area, knows about the very important population of red squirrels in the area. So what are the potential impacts for red squirrel populations and what mitigation measures are planned? So obviously we're very much pro red squirrel conservation and restoration of populations. They're having a terrible time at the moment, and population decline, which is sad to see. Lynx are not going to predate on red squirrels. Red squirrels predominantly are in the trees. There's no chance of a lynx being able to catch a squirrel up a tree. And a lynx isn't going to bother stalking a red squirrel on the ground. It's just not going to do it. But what it will do is increase forest regeneration. And what you find all over Europe is where you find lynx, you find good populations of red squirrels and good populations of pretty much everything else, because you get that balanced ecosystem. So lynx will help red squirrel populations by promoting forest regeneration. A few more from, obviously we understand sometimes people don't want to be named or say where they're from. That's absolutely fine. To what extent is your proposal for lynx to be reintroduced in Kiel that motivated by collaboration with academics studying predator reintroductions and interactions with existing species? Do you plan on future collaborations with any researchers? Yes, yes, and yes. So as we've said, this is a scientific trial. It's to collect data. These are the first lynx back in the UK for 1,300 years. We want to know how they use the environment. We want to know where they go, how big the territories are going to be, how they're going to impact the behavior of the naive prey populations. We absolutely want to look at the interaction with other species. We want to look at how they will impact, and we expect to be positive on a range of species in the area. And this will involve, and it's already written into our project plan, to bring in research students. We already have people offering to do PhDs with us, to do master's projects with us. We spoke to several universities about this. You could fill a Lynx PhD 100 times over with high caliber students, and there's so much interest in this area. So definitely want to work in collaboration with other academics. We're already talking to other academics. I'm an academic by training. A lot of people I know work in study conservation. So yeah, absolutely. And collaborations, yeah, not only collaborations, we want to be funding PhD studentships, we want to be supporting PhD studentships, and we want to build local capacity with local universities to develop those research collaborations. So yeah, absolutely fundamental. Another anonymous one. How do you think you could improve your science communication and public consultation strategies? Is there anything you would like to do differently to address possible conflicts of interest? I mean, like I said, I'm not saying this is not the perfect consultation, because the perfect consultation doesn't exist. There's no benchmark to judge it against. All you can do is make a genuine effort to give everybody a voice. And whether you're pro or against the project, I don't think anyone can accuse us of not giving people the opportunity. There was numerous opportunities in person. There's been numerous opportunities online. We have a very high profile. It's easy to get in touch with us. So in terms of consultation strategy, I think we've done above and beyond. Is it perfect? No. Could we have done more? Of course we could, but we could also consult for the next 10, 15 years. And some stakeholders, some people will never change their mind. Some people might, but there has to come a point where you draw a line under it and you submit once you feel you've gathered enough evidence, and we feel like we have. Is there anything you would do differently to address possible conflicts of interest? I don't know what that means between stakeholders or between our project and farmers, or I don't know. All I say is we've been as open as we can. We've been as inclusive as we can, and like I said, like I've done in this talk, in this presentation, whether you're for or against, we welcome you into our steering group. We want it to be made up of a broad cross section of the Kielder community. That's what we want. So I think that's the best way to deal with any potential ill feeling or conflict. It's to be inclusive and to talk it through, and to give those people a say in what happens to the project, and to give those people an opportunity to put their view forward, to influence what happens, and to raise any concerns that they have, and to be a spokesperson for the area of the community, as it were. If you're a farmer, for example, we want farming representatives on the steering group, arguably the most important stakeholders on there. Equally, we want business people on there who can drive forward ecotourism ideas in the area. So that's where we are. We've been working hard on our resubmission. We've visited Sweden recently to discuss the nitty-gritty of actually bringing Lynx back, and we'll get to the point where we're looking to resubmit. And we've taken on the feedback from Natural England, and we continue to do so. And I thank you all for listening to us. And just to finish on, again, how to get involved, because we always get loads of nice emails afterwards. So if you want to get involved in this, it's a community project, and it will only succeed if the community's on board. We want it to be totally inclusive, and like I said before, if you want to help a volunteer of any conversation, any further questions with us. If there's anything that's not clear from what I've said, if there's any further information you want, if there's any scientific literature you want, if there's any more data that you want, just email us at admin@lynxuk.org and we'll get back to you. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you all in Kielder. And you'll be able to keep in touch with what we're doing on our Facebook, and we'll keep everyone up to date and hopefully see you all soon, and look after yourselves, and thanks a lot. Bye bye.